It's a skill we all need to build and something that many of us struggle with, setting boundaries. Why should we set boundaries and where in our lives do we need to set boundaries? That's what we're going to talk about today on the Limitless Leadership Lounge. I'm John Gehring, joined as always by Dr. Anuma Kareem and Coach Jim Johnson. Dr. Kareem, who's joining us from Bangladesh today, as a lot is going
Mhm.
on out there, but she's able to join us where it's evening and it's morning here. So we're crossing time zones, crossing generations. That's our brand here. If you're enjoying what we have for you here on the lounge, be sure to leave us a review up on your favorite podcast platform. Maybe that's Apple Podcasts, where we have a handful of great reviews up there. We'd love to hear your feedback, and it helps us reach a wider audience too. So let's set some boundaries, shall we, Coach? Talk about one area of where boundaries need to be set in leadership and life.
Well, we've talked about this before, but I got to repeat it again. To be an effective leader, the first person you got to lead is yourself. In doing that, the important thing is that you get clarity of setting boundaries of the things that you're going to do that are going to help you be most effective. So, a couple things I want to share. I think these are things that we've talked about, but I think when setting boundaries, you have to have clarity about your own personal mission. I know we've encouraged many leaders to have their own personal mission statement. Along the lines is having clarity of what your core values are, what are the things that you're going to live by, and really the standards daily that you're going to live by. And then from there, what are your goals? Do you have clarity about the goals that you're trying to accomplish in that? So, with that in mind, here are a couple examples. Number one of my goals is I want to live as long as I can and as healthy as I can. Therefore, I have a personal wellness plan. And part of that wellness plan is I exercise every day. I don't miss. And, it's rare unless I have a real bad illness. I've had a couple surgeries where I couldn't, but other than that, I don't miss. And so a boundary is making and keeping promises with yourself. That builds that muscle. And to do that, you got to block
Mhm.
in when I'm going to exercise. So we're talking, as John mentioned in the morning in this episode. Well, I've done parts of my exercise. I've already done my daily walk and I've already done my strength training for today. Fortunately, later today, as the weather's clearing up, I'm going to play my good friend John in a little tennis. So that'll be an important thing. But I also, part of that is I do a daily walk, which helps me mentally and physically because I usually listen to a podcast or sometimes just think. Second piece is having the boundary of getting clarity of having personal growth. And how do you do that? Physically, we talked about. How about mentally and spiritually? So those are three huge foundations. And for me, again, I block time out. So I started meditating a few years ago, and I now am up to about 20 minutes every day. And I once in a rare while, and something, we're human, where I won't meditate, but one of my rules and my boundaries is I won't miss 2 days in a row. And I haven't missed 2 days in a row meditating in a long time. And then for me, because I am a spiritual person, I do personally believe in God. I pray every day. And again, for me, it's a block between 12 and 15 minutes. Sometimes I'll have extra prayers on a particular day. But the big thing is I block out things, and those are things that are high priorities that can help me mentally, physically, and spiritually. And I really encourage our listeners is that until you can lead yourself effectively, it's very difficult to lead others. So start developing, make and keep promises with yourself and block those times out for those most valuable priorities. I usually have three every day that I want to accomplish.
Very good.
Very
And
good.
Renuma, I know you wanted to take a little bit of a different angle because there's setting boundaries in our personal lives, but then there's also setting boundaries when you're leading a team, and you have a team of
Mhm.
nonprofits to lead. So talk a little bit about how you do that in your leadership.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank Coach for mentioning the personal boundaries because that's so important. And when I'm in Bangladesh, there is a habit everybody is going to bed at like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in the morning. My friends are sleeping at 4 a.m. And even when I went on a trip few days ago, I had that boundary, like I need to go to bed by 10 or by 11. And please excuse me for all the honkings and everything outside. It's a busy city, so you will hear a lot of noise. But yes, team boundaries are so important. And while running a nonprofit, especially during these time when recently our country went through a severe change. It was a student people uprising where they uprooted the previous 15 years government, oppressive government. And I found out that there is this new kind of hostility towards anything that is related to the previous government. So that's why I'm thankful that my nonprofit is non-partisan and non-political. I haven't attached my organization with any political agenda or any political goals or any political people, and that is why nobody could label us, and we could continue serving people without having those kind of label. So one of the things that I am always making sure that none from my team ever show their even personal political beliefs and stuff like that in the social media or publicly. Because when you're part of an organization, a team, anything you do can also have an impact with your organization. So you're representing, you're an ambassador of that organization. So as a leader, I had to put hard rules of these kind of boundaries, ethical and morality issues. Because I'm a nonprofit, these are also two guiding principles. We need to revisit our values, see if our values are aligned with everything. And I'm always like preaching or even preaching my team members that do not do business with organization or people who have issues with morality or have direct conflict with our mission statement, which is helping young people becoming globally conscious youth with good character and morality. And that is why even if Bangladesh, British American Tobacco, they wanted to fund us, we would not take their fund because that is just conflicting with our values. And I think Coach was also mentioning that our podcast might not be interested to get any advertisement from like any alcoholic drinks. So those are some organizational boundaries I think as a leader we have to enforce.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and John, what are some of the interesting personal values with relationship? Because you are also married, you are teaching in the classes and things like that. You're meeting so many people. What are some kind of those personal boundaries that you are focusing on?
When it comes to leading yourself, I think setting boundaries is as much about saying no as it is saying yes. It's as much about protecting your own time as much as it is about filling your time.
Right.
So, on one hand, Coach mentioned some very powerful things about filling your time with things that serve you. And what I want to focus on is the opposite side of that coin, which is eliminating those things that don't serve you. And Renuma, you also brought it up. Your friends who, or just everybody in Bangladesh who, for some reason, wants to stay up until it's almost time to get up, right?
Right.
That's the kinds of things, and that doesn't mean, I don't think that means eliminating people from our lives who don't have the same standards as us, because everybody is framed and shaped by their experiences. And I still have friends who, I disagree with their lifestyle, but I'm not judgmental of them for that lifestyle. It's just a matter of setting boundaries. And in leading yourself, you set boundaries to not go along with something that other people go along with. And I think that's established really young and early on in life. When we talk about this whole concept of peer pressure, boy, is it hard to not cave to peer pressure when you're a young kid or in middle or high school. But as we get older, we understand the importance of setting those boundaries. Maybe that's saying no to some opportunities. Maybe it's
Oh,
even somebody asks coach to be on a podcast and coach just has too much going on and can't fit in that podcast. Maybe it has something to do with his personal values, or maybe the podcast is a great podcast and he would happily go on, but just for the sake of his own time, or because he wants to spend time with his wife, or you just need balance in life. And nobody else is going to achieve that balance for you except for you. Nobody's going to look
mm,
out for you and say, here's a great opportunity to work 60 hours a week on this startup with me. But wait, let me make sure that you're okay first and that you're balancing work and life. I mean, a great leader
mm.
cares about those things, but there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily great leaders out there, and we as individuals have to look out for ourselves. So I think that's the other side of the coin when it comes to setting boundaries.
And
Great point.
this is so important, John, that you brought out, like saying no. I had issues with saying no because I was a people pleaser. I wanted to make everybody happy. Like nobody, why should anybody hate me? So like in my early 20s and even in my 30s, I was like that. But then I had my awakening and realized that it's time to focus on what is important and prioritizing what is important. And that is why now it's so easy without any guilt. I can say no. I've been invited to be part of different boards and interesting projects. But now I just step back. I said that I am curious, but I don't have the time.
Right.
And I cannot torture myself saying yes to everybody because they're nice people and things like that. So I had to say no to so many people. But I explained, like, I really do not have time. And you do not actually create problem with the relationship if you're honest
Mhm.
with that.
That's the
So
key.
that's what I found out.
That's the key. And coach, maybe that's a good question for you because you've lived on this earth for longer than I have. And this is timely for me because I am fortunately receiving a lot of great opportunities and they are nice people and they're good opportunities. What is a good way to respectfully say no without doing any damage to a relationship?
That's a great question. It took me a long time to figure that one out. So you're right, John. I have been on the earth a lot longer. So what I figured out is again going to be intentional about what's your most important. And if for me, God is really important, family is really important, and sometimes I didn't do a very good job with that. So one of the things is the art as a leader is communicating because there are, especially for younger people like you, John, that are getting these good opportunities. That's something you really got to explain to your wife that this is a season right now where I might have to put in extra hours, but then you got to have the season where you're making sure that you're giving extra hours to your family. With the same time, though, is always recognize that they are in your life, and that you're greet them, say hello to them, respect them, listen to them. I think is really, really essential. And one of the things that uh, Stephen Covey talked about this a lot, and is win-win. And my advice to young leaders is really try as you build relationships of how is it a win-win, and with the idea that you're going to give first. And I know when I was young, I was always thinking, how can this person help me first, as opposed to now, as I think I've gotten a lot wiser in this, but it's something I really share with people now is if you're going to build a relationship, start with what can I do to give and add value first.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. Renuma, any final thoughts before we close here about setting boundaries?
We almost covered all the major points, but one thing for sure, like setting boundaries really helps you to have that right mindset to work on the things that you really want to, and it also have positive effect on your health. uh, I have found that out. Like just saying no to my friends that I don't want to party with you guys, I need to sleep, and taking care of myself, setting those boundaries, taking care of myself psychologically, physically, it matters a lot. And being leaders, we have so many obligations. so many responsibilities. And that is why we need to take care of ourselves by setting those boundaries early on.
Agreed. How about you, Coach?
The other thing is, Renuma talked a little bit with you working with teams. I'll just share this one insight is that I think the more effective I became a leader is when I was able to empower my staff and my players. And one of the things, though, going back to the boundaries is remember that you share clear expectations. And if there is boundaries, you share them with them right up front, but then empower them to find out how they can do it most effectively. But then two things with that is the famous, you need to inspect what you expect. So you should set up a process of communication, whether it's a one-on-one meeting or a one-on-one Zoom call or phone call, but so that you're finding out how are they doing and how can you best support them.
Love it. All good things. If you need to set boundaries today, you're not alone. It doesn't make you a bad leader just because you need to set boundaries or you struggle with your personal boundaries. But I think from those key points, we can take away coaches' early on points about setting those positive boundaries in your life for yourself. Then you can also take away what I was saying about those negative boundaries, those things that we need to cut out of our lives so that we have time for those positive boundaries. And then Renuma, when it comes to building teams, you said some really great things as well. We hope you took away some insight from this short episode here on the Limitless Leadership Lounge. We like to do this at the end of every month. The last week of the month, we give you one with just the three of us. But next week, we'll be back with another guest, and we hope to see you back right here with us on the Limitless Leadership Lounge.